Looks like it. Yep. Welcome everybody to our December school board meeting. Susan, would you call the roll?
Trustee Schaefer.
I'm here.
Trustee Morton.
Here.
Trustee Greenberg.
Here.
Trustee Alm.
Here.
Trustee Gay.
Here.
Student trustee Damiani.
Here.
All present.
Okay, we have nothing to report out of closed session, so our first item is approving the agenda. Are there any changes anybody would like to make to our agenda?
Are we ready to have the grant policy on? Have you met with the committee? Or should we put that off another month?
I am meeting the grant.
The information only,
Yeah, they're information only. I asked for it to be in January because I have to have time to meet with news, course boosters, and club card.
I think since we have 3 months in the process, that it probably makes it's okay to.
well, he's meeting very soon with the organization,
Right.
and there's language that is needing to be reviewed.
Right, so
And-
I'm saying if that will happen before our January meeting for our first reading.
Because it'll go, I'll have met with all 3 organizations by January, and the policies committee will have met.
And if there's a problem, then we can always postpone it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's on now, but to me, it doesn't need to be on
Well,
here.
it was on, wasn't it on last month?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just left it on as information. We didn't bring it forward.
And then you haven't met with the committee yet.
The-
Have you met with the policy committee since
No,
then?
the December.
Because it was so short.
Yeah, the
Right.
December meeting.
That's why
we
I'm
did.
saying I don't know if there's anything. Did you
So we
change it
didn't-
at all?
No, we just left it where
Just
it was.
carried it over.
And then it'll be first reading in January.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Remy? Aye, okay, unanimous. All right, our first item is public hearing regarding the accounting of developer fees for the 2017-18 fiscal year. Is there anybody who came to give the board comment regarding the accounting of developer fees? Seeing no one, I will close that public hearing. We'll discuss that item later. Item number 6 is our consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those, Remy?
Aye.
Everybody else?
Aye.
Okay, so we're up to reports, and Remy, you get to give our student trustee report.
All right, so I apologize for not being at the last meeting. I should work on getting a report to you guys if I'm not going to attend. So right now, what's going on in school? Recently, like this year, as you know, we've been at the high school switching our grading policy to more of a like standards-based rather than just like getting work in. So it's more based on if you actually know content in a class. So the majority of your grading classes will be like tests and quizzes and other assessments. So currently we don't have exact data on it, and Tobin has told me that he's going to have teachers do surveys with students so that we can get actual feedback and data to see how it's like going, because I know that a lot of students have some strong opinions on it. So I can have that by next meeting of like how the students are actually feeling about the new grading policy and how it's working. So yeah, there's that. And then we also in our ASB we're talking about getting more student input on how they felt about the police presence, because it's important. We think that it's important to also hear what the students have to say, as well as the parents and staff and everyone else. So I can have those by next meeting, like a data or feedback. So yeah. And then for our sports, recently all the basketball teams, which is our only winter sport, went to a tournament in Pescadero. The boys one went undefeated, so 4 times champion of that. And then the JV boys got 3rd place, and the girls got 3rd place as well. So that's all we have for sports, because it was our first tournament of the season. Let's see, and then some academic events that are happening. So recently, the robotics club went to a tournament in Yuba City?
Ukiah.
Okay, Ukiah. So at the tournament, they did well. They had some pretty tough opponents that they were going up against, and they said it was really fun to be able to see all the other schools and all the other entrants. And yeah, they're going to keep moving forward with that. This Saturday, we're having a Cte Fair, which is a showcase of our Cte programs, including the Francis's electronics and e-lab classes, Eric Rain's art classes, including like 3D design, ceramics, photography. And then there will also be Marshall Brown having showcases for his programs, Carolyn giving showcases for culinary, I believe, and doing lunch. And so they're going to be selling things that they have, that they make in their class, and overall promoting their programs. So, yeah. That's happening this Saturday at
3 to 6.
3 to 6, all right. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you. Tobin, I guess you're up next.
All right, so I have sort of some things that complement what Remy was talking about. And just an update on the WASC, we're still moving forward. We have our mid-cycle review. Liz Newkirk is working with me to run that review. We've done most of our data gathering. We had several meetings with parents, students, and teachers, and this is to review and compile the progress we've made on our current goals, as well as to ask for input on revisions and next steps for those goals. This is a smaller than the 6-year review, so we don't go digging quite as deeply, but we have definitely some good feedback to help us move forward. And we'll have that review March 18th, so of course I'll keep you posted as we get closer to that. CTE, you heard Remy talk about this weekend. CTE teachers have also, a couple met with Mendocino College to look at dual enrollment opportunities. One of the stumbling blocks for us is that it's best if those high school teachers have masters in their area, because then the credit can be transferable. But we're looking at opportunities to increase our relationship with Mendo College. This Wednesday, they're meeting with the Fort Bragg CTE teachers, so we're getting some good collaboration and communication between the sites. And that's all being driven by our Mary Makala, who worked with us last year and is consulting for us this year. We also have a few grants in the wings that we'll be looking to see if they're going to work for us. The second round of the CTE grant is coming up. Update, last time I presented out in CompShoot, we talked about the chronic absenteeism task force, and we've continued to meet and are moving forward with that. We've gone from just sort of knowing it's an issue and having lists of students to actually having real strategies that are tiered for depending on how at risk a student is. Things that include letters, having counselors do outreach, personal contact with students and parents, removing barriers, things that might be keeping a student from being able to make it to school. And Jason and I on Wednesday are going back to meet with the county again and get more information and ideas in that area. So I feel like that is really working well, and that those meetings are being very productive and giving us a lot of insight. And I think we'll see the benefits of that over the next year. Lastly, we back at the end of, or beginning of November, we sat down about a group of 8 staff members, and we did the Theia survey again. You guys might remember I gave you guys this last I don't know, January, February, somewhere in there. But it's basically a rubric for supporting MTSS in schools, which is the multi-tiered systems of supports. And it has 5 domains, from administration to instruction to family outreach. It sounds a lot like the LCAP, actually. So this is a list of best practices developed by this SWIFT organization, and they give a rubric, and we basically go through and we say, what are we doing? So I think I'll share with you the second report, and you can compare it to the first. And we've definitely made progress in areas. There's a couple areas that went down, and I think that's just probably a difference in how we graded ourselves. But definitely we were making some progress. I really think the most interesting part about this, I'll hand it out in a second, is just the rubric in the back. Like, is your school doing these things? And there's some that we've decided just don't really apply to us. So it's not like our goal is to get 100% implementation of this, but it's just a good self-accountability thing for us to look at. Are we doing the right thing? Are we following best practices? So I'll hand that out, and you guys can just kind of look over it on your own, and you might still have the one from last year you can compare it to. So you can see the way all this works is it has the January 26th, and then it has November 2nd. So you probably remember this graph from last time, but now there's 2 columns, and that shows what's gone up and what's gone down. We don't really have time to get into this a lot, and again, this is not like, this is a guideline, sort of a suggestion. It's not like, if we're not doing something, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. If we are, great, But you can see under the domains, you can read some of the things. And I think, if anything, it's just interesting to see, are we doing this? Is this something we're doing? And is it important to us? Some of the things aren't as important to us as others, just based on our demographic. But it is interesting to look at nonetheless. So I will leave you with that.
Oh, thank you. Any questions for Toby? All right, Jason.
All right, so it's only been 7 school days since we last met. So, I just thought I would mention some updates on the district-wide committees. So all of our committees have met in those 7 days, oddly enough. So the Wellness Committee, we decided, if you recall, to have a pilot program where we serve less meat in the cafeteria. But when we do serve meat, it's organic, and when it's for beef, we do the local Covelo beef. And we thought we'd do that for 2 months and then come back and look at numbers, see where we are. We met this past week, and Diane brought some reports, and I'm gonna, these lights have been doing this every now and then, so I don't know if we maybe somebody go over to that panel and there you go.
They went out in the hallway also.
So, let's see, where was I? So Diane came, and we haven't really, we haven't seen much as far as the lunch numbers, a major increase or a major decrease. We do see this year many more students eating snack. Our snack numbers are way up, our snack sales. But for lunch, it's been pretty even. We do have a few more students in the district, so that helps. And then, of course, Albion School is all free lunch based on their numbers this year. They qualified for a state program, so that is increasing our numbers as well. And I will go into further detail in January. I'll do a wellness and cafeteria report. But our wellness committee decided to keep doing, to offer more meat during the week, but still offer the vegetarian selections. Because the one complaint that we do hear a lot from students is they want more meat. So Diane likes to tell a story where one day she had some leftover beef and she made a pan of lasagna with beef, and then the rest of it was vegetarian, and the students caught wind of there being beef lasagna, and they just went nuts, I guess. There's beef, what? There's beef? Oh, I wish I would have known, I would have gotten lunch that day. So, but we're gonna continue to get the Covelo beef, but we're gonna go back to the commodity chicken, because the organic chicken was very expensive, and it's really cost prohibitive. And Diane really thinks that the commodity chicken is a good, high-quality chicken. I've asked her to get back to me some details on, exactly what is in that chicken, if there's anything that I need to put out to parents, just to make sure that they know exactly what we're doing in the cafeteria. But we're going to continue to offer organic milk. I think that's a great thing for our kids. So we still are going to offer a lot of organic selections, and like I said, that local beef. Many of our vegetables and fruits still are going to be organic as well. So the only thing we're going to change at this point is the chicken. And I'll talk more about this in January when I do that report. The Safety and Security Committee, we did not meet, but instead of having a committee meeting, I have scheduled a meeting for whoever wants to come, parents, community, teachers, to discuss the law enforcement, the deputies coming to campus every now and then, and just mainly to hear their questions, concerns on both sides of the issue. And I was going to gather all those questions and get those to Sheriff Allman and the board before our January 17th meeting, where he's coming to share with us. I've already heard from 3 parents who can't attend the meeting, so I'm glad that parents are getting their voices heard.
And Remy said the students, at least at the high school, want to have their voices heard too.
Yep. Great. Oddly enough, they have not been on our campuses since before the October board meeting, so it's been a while since they've come. Chronic absenteeism task force. Tobin talked a bit about that. If the year ended today, we'd be at 13%, which is a 5.5% improvement, but we still want to get it down there to. We'd love to cut that number in half and be at 9% this year. But we did identify barriers, strategies, and then actions. We just went through the list of all the students who are chronically absent, and we talked about why they might be chronically absent. And then we just took turns saying, hey, I have a relationship with this family, or I know this, I'm going to be contacting this family anyway, I'll take this one, I'll take this one. So we all have our assignments to contact our families and find out why they're absent, and then what we can do to help and support them. And then Tobin mentioned we're going to our next meeting on Wednesday. That's all I have.
We haven't received the dashboard yet from the state?
No, we received a preview, but I don't believe it's public yet.
Okay. Any questions for Jason? MTA report.
One thing that we've been struggling with is the substitute teachers, and Jason and I have met and came up with some strategies that hopefully will work with, because it's been a problem K-12 getting subs and making sure that they're have a respectful learning environment, that they have a good day. At the high school, Andy Wellspring has started a Model UN club, and they are heading to Berkeley to do the Model UN. They are Romania. So if you want to find out about Romanians' positions on various things, you can ask Andy. And he's also looking for volunteers if they can get some help. And he's putting in a lot of time on that, so I just wanted to give a shout out to him. Last meeting, you talked about preschool, and I did want to read the California Teachers Association position, which is that learning begins before students enter kindergarten. All California kids deserve access to high quality early childhood education. So, you know, we as MTA are very in favor of having a credentialed teacher in a preschool on campus here. And that is it.
No one from CMUS. Board trustee reports. Jim?
I have nothing.
Woodsbury.
Appreciated all the photos that, I don't know if it was Mark, who dug those up. That
Those
was
are
really
cool.
neat to see, and just stirring my mind and moving forward with looking at options for the high school and even the others. There seemed like there was a style that the schools were being built in those days, because that one at Fort Bragg looked very similar, and some of the other ones. I really enjoyed that, and on that same note, I'm looking forward to attending the meeting at the building department with Jason and the builder that Jessica introduced.
Joe.
Just, so I said it before, I think it's a great opportunity for us, that it's going to take a lot. I'm looking forward to us having input on the design and not farming that out to someone else. And I went to the varsity tournament down at Pescadero. Really enjoyed that. I think Jim Young said that entire high school is well under 100 students. I think he might have said 50.
In Pescadero.
Yeah. Incredible and great community involvement, selling food. They must have had, I don't know, 15 or 20 girls on their squad, so they must have had every single girl in the school playing basketball. And they don't fare super well against the rest of the teams, but they continue to put this tournament on year after year. It was my first time attending, but getting to spend the time with Jim and hearing the history, I really enjoyed. That's all.
Are you going to be talking about the meeting with the architect? Because I'm happy to pass that on to someone else that we met. Michael, were you going to report on that?
The one with Mark Katroki?
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about that already?
Okay. It's been such a short time.
Yeah.
I have nothing to report.
Okay.
Doris, am I correct that Don Kirkpatrick died?
Yes, I was gonna say something during the
Oh, good, I'm
comments.
gonna leave it to you then. I'm gonna leave it to you.
Sad.
Yeah,
I didn't know
a big
that.
part of our district history. He was responsible for this building.
I didn't know that.
I know that either.
When did that happen?
Lots of buildings.
That's all I know.
I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that Jessica's other board seat, you know, she was returned as the top vote getter for the hospital district. So I know that your intelligence and common sense will be very valuable on that.
Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment from
Have all votes been counted now?
They have,
Yeah,
they were
it's
finally
official.
counted the other day. And there were a couple changes. I mean, one of the good news things about the change was that the bond for the Round Valley School District got enough votes to pass, so.
It spiked to 60-something.
Yeah.
It had just failed and then it passed.
So that was why we counted the vote. And I want to remind everybody that MCOE is having a workshop this Friday or Saturday. Friday's in Fort Bragg from 5 to 8:30. Saturday is from 9 to 12:30. It's training for board members covering board governance and protocols, Brown Act training, fiscal compliance and understanding, strategic planning in relation to the LCAP, team building and leadership styles, and impact to the board. So if you're interested, I think you all got one of those in the mail, but I've got mine here if you want to consult it. That's it for that. So it's early, so Rebecca, we'll ask you to step forward. What?
Is this the time?
No, we're gonna wait till 6 unless, if you want to do it now, Doris, I don't mind doing it now. Why don't we do it now? Come up and do it now.
Yeah, since you last met, as Mark mentioned, Don Kirkpatrick passed away. Don was district superintendent for 14 years, from the mid-70s to 1990. On his watch, at one point, the enrollment of the district was over 1,000, and he was responsible for starting the Compshe and Greenwood schools and the community schools, and spearheaded the culture that has set Mendocino apart ever since and continues to. So don't you guys screw up. Oh, and there's a memorial for Don in January. It's the first Saturday of, it's about the 5th, I think, 2 o'clock at the Presbyterian Church. Thank you.
Thank you for letting
Thanks,
us know.
Thomas, for letting us know.
Mark, you have one?
Yeah, it would, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
He was responsible for getting this building built and for all the alternative energy that was put in at Greenwood School, going to the state and lobbying for that specifically. And he was superintendent when most of us were hired. I think I was hired the year before, but just as there are a bunch of young teachers now having babies, there was a whole crew of young teachers that were hired when he came up here. And he was here for a long time and went on from that to be a superintendent in Saudi Arabia and was there during the Gulf War, being a school superintendent.
All right, so with a little more warning, here's Rebecca.
Oh, it's okay.
Rebecca's our technology integration teacher, and she gives us an annual update on how we use technology and why this is the best job possible, right?
Biannually this time, actually. So these are some of the things I'm going to mention or talk about today. We have a lot of Chromebooks right now. Mission accomplished. This gives us a list of how we've distributed them across the district, which is pertinent because we've done a lot of changes this year. We have bought a lot of new Chromebooks. The fourth and fifth grade classrooms all have brand new Chromebooks this year. This is a summary of actually the new things that we've bought, and the purpose of buying so many this year was so that we could go one-to-one at the high school. This is where I spent about a month of my life at the beginning of the school year. People were missing me. They're like, where is Rebecca? Oh, she's in the library. I spent a long time and took over, bless Laurie's heart, the entire back section of the library, because part of the challenge for this was that we had to move a lot of Chromebooks that were already in the district around. It didn't make sense to give our high schoolers as much as they would have liked brand new Chromebooks, and I got a lot of flack for not giving them brand new Chromebooks, but the seniors did not get the newest devices. We actually took some of the devices that have been in the district for a while and recycled them or upcycled them to the high school. Also for the juniors, we did the same thing. This was kind of the map that I used. There were some changes that went along the way, but you can see that almost every Chromebook in the school got relocated somewhere. My car was full of a lot of technology at various times during the beginning of the school year. As a result, it has meant that 48 of our 51 freshmen have a school-provided Chromebook. The other 3 decided that they wanted to use their own device. And you can see the rest of the numbers. It reduces as we approach juniors and seniors, the thought being that by that point, many of them had brought their own device and were comfortable using their own device. One of the things that we had to do early on, we'd originally only projected to buy 50 new devices, which would have more than covered the freshmen. Unfortunately, our students at the high school started changing their minds. They were like, wait, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure most of you have seen the Chromebook at this point, but it's very lightweight. It stays charged for about 8 hours a day. It's not extremely, sorry, I've already said it's lightweight, so they can keep it in their backpacks. What a lot of students are doing is keeping their device at home and then using this for school purposes, which works out well for the model that we're hoping to create. A few important things about how these were set up. It was quite a bit of organization. The Chromebooks have a spot on there for the student name, barcode. That allows us to scan and check things out in the library to them, so we know exactly where the Chromebook is. Students also had to, with their parent, fill in a fairly lengthy but simplified acceptable use policy. And then finally, when they thought they'd done all of their signing, I presented them with another piece of paper that they had to fill in and give to me if they wanted to get their actual Chromebook. There are a few things that we were able to do to try and make sure that our devices are safe and secure. Students can actually only use their @MUSD students account with the Chromebooks that are at the high school. There's slight differentiations and groupings throughout the district so that we can customize the settings. But for the high school, there's no reason that anybody that doesn't have an @MUSD students account should be using a Chromebook. So that reduces them from using their personal Gmail account. We're also able to save any history automatically and disable the ability to have that deleted. And incognito mode allows you to browse without creating a history, so that obviously is disabled. Neat thing is that I can do a lot of this stuff from my computer. The main way to manage these Chromebooks is through the Google Admin Console, which is on the right. Here we can see who last logged on to the Chromebook, how many times it's been synced, or when was most recently synced, how long it's been online. We can also change things and like allowing them to install add-ons or any individual like apps that are connected to Google Google Play Store. It also allows us to force install some of these apps, which is really useful. Some of the younger grades. There's a tool called Google Read and Write that will read the stuff that's on the page for them. We also keep track of the Chromebooks in areas, and we can check them out to a teacher or to individual students. The barcode that we've printed onto the computers can just be scanned, and that connects with the student's Aries account, and then we can see which devices have been checked out to who.
Before you go too much farther, how difficult is it to manage the 30% of the students who don't use Chromebooks?
That don't use their Chromebooks?
They're using their own devices.
Well, we'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
And then finally, sorry, the Google Sheets. I also have my track of what's going on in Google Sheets just because it's easier to move stuff around and to see what's happening. And one of the things that we'll have to think about is at the end of the school year, the plan was to collect the Chromebooks from the high school students, make sure that they're working correctly, and then redistribute them at the start of the school year. So we have hopefully storage and space for them if that's still going to be the current plan, but that is our goal. In terms of damage, right now we've had 4 batteries that have needed to be replaced. The good news is it's only been $20 a pop. The Chromebooks are designed to have like pretty simple machinery, and so they're not very expensive to replace. Our eLab students and electronics students working with Francis have actually been responsible for replacing some of these. And all of the Chromebooks that needed a new battery were the ones that were moved from the 4th and 5th grade classrooms, which were actually purchased when I started working for the school district in 2014. So, I mean, for such a old device, they seem to be performing quite well. The other thing that was bound to happen is screens that have been broken. So far, we've only had 2. Again, not super expensive to repair, about $40. And all this stuff is listed in their acceptable use policy so that they know what they're signing up for and what costs they might be liable for if something should happen to their device. If I go back, one of the things that we're hoping to do, or I'm hoping to do, we purchased in excess in terms of Chromebooks that we need. We didn't want to be in a position where we won't be able to like follow through with this, and especially since students started shifting and changing their minds about wanting one at the end of September and October, we actually got more Chromebooks. So right now we have 24 that are available in the Chromebook cart at the high school, and our vision is hopefully that they won't be there forever. Once the students are used to having their own device and they're in the habit of bringing one every single day and having it charged and it definitely being ready to work, then we'll be able to kind of filter those back to other places that they might be needed, or maybe to the freshmen next year. That's what I'm thinking. In answer to your question, and I skipped over this, one of the things that we're currently trialing is a a software called by NetTop Vision, which will allow students to teachers to monitor what students are doing in real time on their devices. It's the same kind of monitoring software that's available in the K-8 Mac Lab. It's been around for a while, but it works with the Chromebooks really well. Right now we have a trial version until the December break, at which point we'll have to decide whether we want to fork out the money, and it's about $800 to have it so that it's working for every student that has an account and a Chromebook. That would not help for the students that are using their own personal device. In terms of how they use them in the classroom, typically, because we've fairly well integrated Google apps, it means most students do a lot of their work on their Google Drive, and so they're working on it remotely, and so that has removed some of that. There are definitely issues if, let's say, in science they want to work on a particular experiment, they really need Excel, and so that's why having a lower lab and other options available is still important when we're looking to plan for the technology for the future. Chromebooks are great, and they're fantastic for pulling out of your backpack and working on for a few minutes, but they're not, a super robust processing machine that would run Excel. I'm all over the place today, I'm sorry. So a few other things that are not related to Chromebooks. We have some free resources that Mendocino County Office of Education have recently given us access to. I've been working with teachers one-on-one on this, doing it in their classrooms, but what next step is to share some of these things. Some of them are more useful than others, and so I've been reluctant. I know how busy teachers are. If I send them a list of links, they're probably not going to click on them. Whereas if I narrow it down to a couple and then really push, there are some really fantastic resources on here. We just need to narrow it down to the really, really good ones. But it's something that every school in California now has access to. I talk about this pretty much every time. Here's a summary of some of the things that we've been working on this year. This year, one of the changes, I've worked with 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th grade on a weekly basis for the last couple of years. This year, I've also been working with the 6th grade team. We have a new 6th grade teacher, and it kind of worked out to be a pretty good opportunity to work with him and to work with the 6th grade students and keep building on the tech skills that they already have. So we're kind of trying to apply a lot of the stuff that they can already do. We haven't got into the nitty-gritty of Google Sheets, but I'm pretty excited about launching into that soon. Our computer science standards for California were actually adopted on September 7th. I consider us to be way far ahead of everyone because we actually have time in our schedule built for computer science. And a lot of what we currently do, although it's not mapped to their standards, we're ticking all of those boxes. And this has been in the works for a while. We do not have any more School Dude. James has set up a tech request system using email. Otto and I worked together to make 2 forms, the MRF and the ERCARF. Maintenance request form, event request form. We thought the acronyms were very important. And last but not least, any questions?
But do you think there are any kids that are intimidated by that and maybe would not get one because they're concerned about signing?
There are, unfortunately, because both myself and the office staff at the high school know most of these students really well at this point. Many of them I've taught them for the last 4 years. We have about 5 students that currently keep their device at school in the Chromebook cart. And so it's there safe. They don't have to deal with any the responsibility of taking it home.
So they don't have to sign that blue sheet?
Yeah. There are some special cases where that's the case and they have a Chromebook that's available to them at school, but they just don't take it home.
And I'm just curious, can you track it, the way you can find a phone? Can you
They're not enabled with GPS, so no, you can't do that. You can shut them down and tell them to stop working if they're not on our network anymore.
Okay.
And you can also see who the last user was to sign in.
What's your assessment of internet access at home these days beyond dial-up?
We live in such a unique place that I know that there's a significant portion of students that don't have access to the internet at home. With the Chromebooks, they can sync once they return to school. So they can set it up so that they can work on their Chromebook at home, but it'll just sync when they return to the internet access at school. And so far, it doesn't seem like we've had any bandwidth issues. I think one of the next kind of focus of the next phase of our focus is to really making sure that the students bring their device every day and the students and teachers are kind of using them for a couple of minutes at a time, not necessarily because I'm asking them to use them, but because it's useful for whatever they're doing in their class. I know that there's a band of students right now that just go get them from the library because it's a bit more easy for them, but I'm about to start giving them a hard time about it.
Have you given any thoughts to any changes or needs that might be addressed at the high school when we do potentially major remodel work there?
The technology stuff? I think, well, and the exciting thing, especially with Laurie being our new librarian, she is extremely willing to try new stuff and learn new things. It's been interesting to see the space kind of morph a little bit. When I go in there now, there's just like a sea of Chromebooks as students are working. I don't know if you're very familiar with the setup at the high school, but we have a bank of virtual desktops, which work really well because we can manage them from one location, from one server, and it's easy to install updates and manage all of those things. They're also relatively inexpensive. I think that in the future, we probably will remove some of those, and I think that investing in the ROP lab, which is downstairs, and having it be more of a publishing center and having like the higher end computers, which they currently have, and then talking with Marshall some more, because obviously a lot of his programs are very tech heavy and are very specific about the software and technology that they need in order to be compatible with the stuff that he already has.
So the students who are bringing their own computers in, do they still have to log in with their school ID in order to get internet service?
So right now, in order to get Intern Access, they log into the student network, and that obviously gives them certain access, but it's limited. The goal, and you'd have to check in with James about this, is to have a single sign-on using Active Directory, so that when students log into their computers or accounts, they would go directly onto the network that is for them based on their email address. I am not too familiar as how that is set up or progressing. I just deal with my side, with the Chromebooks.
But as far as you know, we're not having issues with people downloading things they shouldn't be, and
I mean, I feel like it's always a potential, and so this year I haven't heard too many complaints or issues. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I thought we'd have a few more breakages by now. I thought we'd have a few more tech violations by now, but I've been up there fairly often this school year. There's a bit more flexibility in my schedule with the Chromebook deployment stuff, so I've been able to stay up there a little bit longer, and I haven't heard too much, so that's encouraging.
What's your assessment of how keyboarding skills are going?
I'm pretty encouraged. There is definitely the challenge is continuing keyboarding practice through the curriculum when there's so much other stuff to pack in. Right now we start with the first graders basically learning how the computer works, and we focus on number and letter practice by playing different online games, and that works really well. By the time they hit second grade, that's when we really start introducing keyboarding, and for some of them it's challenging because their fingers are just not quite big enough, and so it's very low-key, there's no speed involved, it's just practice. And I don't know, I give out stickers, googly eye things and whatnot, and so by the time they hit third grade, we use the same program, Dance Mat Typing, which doesn't have any speed or anything on there, but then students are also practicing typing up some things that are related to their classwork, so they've got the application of their typing skill. And then fourth and fifth grade, we do not have, honestly, there's so much stuff to cover in terms of digital citizenship and being responsible and using the technology that they have access to. It's kind of this, keyboarding is one of those things that takes a lot of time to practice, but it's not necessarily something that requires an instructor for. Once they understand the concept and what they're supposed to be doing, it really is just about practice. So we try to provide that time in their classrooms, but it's really, a small amount. I think by really pushing third grade, that's helping the fourth and fifth graders establish the baseline of skills that they need. So then when they're using their Chromebooks in their classroom, when they're using the computers in the computer lab with me, they're just reinforcing the skill that they've already developed, as opposed to having to relearn something. That way, by the time they get to sixth grade, they have the skills so that when they're asked to write up a report, they're not struggling to figure out where their keys are. That was a very long response, sorry.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Just curious, are they allowed to use spell check?
Are they allowed to use spell check?
Are they allowed to have auto spell check? I mean, because then they can. Okay, just.
I mean, I don't know what I would do without it, so.
Yes.
I know that Dina Zarlin, retired teacher, is helping the third graders at the Comsey School.
Yep.
Are we doing enough at Comsey and Albion so that when they come here in fourth grade, they're at the same level as the students who were here for?
I think so. We're really great, like we're really fortunate to have someone going out to Comsey and working with those students so regularly, and they obviously have access to a set of relatively new computers. What tends to happen is about a month or two before testing starts, I'll go out there as well and start going through some of the other tech skills and kind of build on that, and then they'll be doing their testing on the computers, which requires a lot of these like foundational skills. Albion, their classes change so frequently, like from year to year. Last year they had six third graders, and so I went out almost once a week, and they each had their own Chromebook, and we worked on a lot of these skills. The key was really to make sure that when they get here in fourth grade, they're not intimidated by it. Fortunately, like there's the fourth and fifth grade classes are combined, so even when that happens, the fifth graders definitely have to take a leadership role and help those fourth graders navigate getting Google accounts and things like that. In this year, things have been a little different with the Chromebook deployment, with the nature of the different students at Albion too, and so we have yet to formulate a plan for getting out there on a regular basis, but it'll happen. There's plenty of time for them to get the essential skills that they need, I think, before they get back here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Jason, I don't know how long you have to give your report, so.
I'll make it as long as it needs to be, but as short as possible. I think someone at this school actually taught me that line. Because everyone used to ask, how long is my paper due to be? All right.
Yeah, that doesn't amplify your voice.
I know.
All it does is the people who are watching on YouTube will be able to hear what you're saying.
I picked up on that. Oh yeah, I'd probably be better than running it off of the key. How's everyone doing tonight?
Very good. It's a stand-up routine, right?
Yeah, wrong job. Okay, welcome. My name is Jason. I'm the business manager for the school district here in Mendocino. This is going to be a very high-level overview of the first interim. So this is for period 1 from July through October. And thank you guys for moving the meeting. I will say one thing I learned is I will definitely be very, very wary about ever moving a meeting up again, ever. Especially if I ever have to give a report. So, but here we are. We got through it, and this is backwards, right? So yeah, this shouldn't take too long, depending on how many questions you guys have. I'm going to go through revenues, expenditures, some multi-year stuff, and just give you a general idea of where we're at. So, Our primary source of revenue, you see on the top line, is the LCFF sources, which is primarily local property taxes. So you can see that our budget at this interim went up. We would normally expect that to go up more because we least Cynthia tend to budget quite conservatively, which is something that I believe in as well. But due to the fires in Mendocino County, there is an expected drop in revenue for this year. And it confused me a little bit at first. I thought that our property taxes came from property taxes in our district only. And technically that is the case, but the way the county office calculates how things are apportioned, property taxes in other districts also affect us, particularly because we're basic aid. I'm not exactly sure what the algorithm is, but so that's why we don't see as much of an increase in the LCFF as we would normally expect. Our federal revenues are basically fairly flat. We expected a small increase, which is what we got. Our big hit, we had talked about this at the Finance Committee, is the other state revenue. So the big one here is the reduction in mandated costs. And this is another thing that happens at the state level. So if you're not familiar with mandated costs, these are reimbursements the state gives districts for all the hoops that they make us jump through. So we have to fill out all these forms, do all these requirements. There's a cost to doing that. So those are mandated reimbursements, particularly for basic aid districts, again, which is us. We took a big hit here. And this is something that we probably won't see come back if history is any indicator. So, so that's why we see a big negative there for the other state. And our other local is fairly flat. We did get some Muse grant funding, which is the significant amount of that increase. But for revenues overall, basically because of that mandated cost hit, we're looking on the year to be 30,000 down, or close to 31. So we're gonna have to take a look at that. Expenditures. So salaries, so these are both certificated and classified salaries. You can see we actually went down in cost for our projection for this year. This is mainly numerous positions that were refilled at lower step levels, which there were some that were at a pretty high level. So we have significant adjustment in there. And you can see benefits actually go up, and some may ask, well, if our salaries went down, why are benefits going up? We did have one particular FTE that had an hourly change that pushed them into the benefits hourly range, and benefits are expensive, so it only takes one to really knock that number around. So expenditures, you'll see that we're 18,000, increasing the budget by 18,000. As Rebecca was talking about, we got those Chromebooks, so that's a big part of that. A big portion of that is offset essentially by, what was it, college readiness, I believe we took out of. But it's all part of the same category. It wasn't, when the budget was created, those were not finalized yet. Other expenses, so this is basically, so books and supplies are tangible things, things you go to the store and buy. Services are services. So you can see here, our budget has increased by $71,000, close to 72. The big hit here is we had some unforeseen bus repairs. So there were just a couple of very large repairs to the tune of over $30,000. It was actually more than that, but that was unanticipated. And having looked at past budgets, this is not something that's normal, but I do think that we might need to relook at what we budget for unforeseen bus repairs, because there seem to be some every year that apparently we go over budget on. The other big piece of that, I believe, from what I have been able to find out, and I'm not exactly sure why, is an over-encumbrance. So this is basically, when the budget was set last year, there was a certain amount set for certain line items, and then immediately a PO was opened that was over the amount that was budgeted. Still not exactly sure why that was. I'm not gonna call on my predecessor and ask her. So what that means is basically an encumbrance is when we open up a PO and say we expect to spend this money. So it comes out of the budget as if it's already spent, but it's not really spent yet. So I think there's some of these that are just weird, like fuel is one example. I'm still doing some research, but we budgeted $40,000 for fuel, and then immediately a PO is open for $50,000. So that might be offset by some athletic costs. I'm not exactly sure yet. But there's other areas where it was just over encumbered, but the money hasn't been spent yet. That doesn't mean that it isn't needed or won't be spent. Because from what I've been able to tell, the reason these POs were open for the amounts they were is because that's what we spent last year, which seems like a pretty good starting point. But, so the total in expenditures were really up about $54,000, and that's a significant amount. That's something that we definitely need to look at going forward. And I'll talk more big picture here, it might be next. This is just a snapshot of our interfund transfers. So, you know, MCN continues to contribute, which is great. It's technically up there. This is what we, the district, pays MCN for our telephone service. That hasn't changed. Our transfers to the preschool is projected to go down, which is great. We believe that's due to a change in personnel, and this is another step change, and that attendance is just up higher than what we had expected. So extrapolating out to our cafeteria fund, we expected that to need to be increased. I know Jason is intending to give a more comprehensive report on the cafeteria pilot that we've been running this year. But so far, we spend a lot of money on milk. So we anticipate an increased need in that. But really, it all kind of shakes out. You know, 2,500 is fairly flat. So we look like we're pretty much on target there right now, just in terms of interfund transfers. Okay, so this is the bottom line. This is kind of a little bit of a grimmer picture. So, you know, don't let the beginning fund balance fool you. So at this point, at the first interim, yes, we intend to have a beginning fund balance that's higher than what we projected, but that's just higher than what we projected. If you look down at the ending fund balance, you can see at the first interim we're projecting, you know, 454,000 deficit spending, and that's significant, and that's significantly higher than what was budgeted for. So this is something that you know, we're going to start to look at a lot more closely in terms of how to turn this trend around, because this is not sustainable, and so we're going to have to look at what to do about that. So that's something else I learned going through this exercise. Revolving cash, you don't really need to worry about economic uncertainty. That's basically just a reserve. This is a certain amount we always have to set aside for economic uncertainty. And there you have the bottom line. You take all that out. We're projected at the end to have an unassigned balance of 1.7 million and change. Okay, so I snuck this in here about a couple hours ago. I learned that I legally have to show everyone here this. This is just basically saying that we meet the minimum required reserve. You don't have to sign it, but I made you a copy just so you can see it. Just showing that we are compliant with the amount of reserves that we need to have. Can you share it? Sure. So it's not very pretty, but the bottom line is this number here says like 1.42 million. That's the amount in excess that we have over what is required. So that's that. Now you can't say you never saw it. Oh, what, am I not reading it right?
Yeah.
I can't read it. You guys can probably read it better.
There's another discrepancy I caught too, which is that on this form, you have the minimum reserve requirement is 5%, and for our district, it's only 4%.
That was pre-populated in the state form. So, and I just left it there because I knew we would exceed it.
So I'm just saying that's the reason why it doesn't add up to the 1.7 figure that you showed on a previous slide is for that reason.
Right, and for the purposes of this exercise, as long as we're over it, so we're being super conservative.
Yeah.
So this gives you another good view of what will happen if we just carry on like we're carrying on. So, so you can see that our intended revenue is going up modestly, but not as fast as we project our expenditures to go up. So if you look at the net change, and don't add the numbers up because I'd only put things in here that I thought were really poignant. But the net change is the total. So like right now, we're projected to deficit spend $454,000. Going forward, next year, $797,000. The year after that, $781,000. Those are some giant numbers. And so those are things that we have to look at because that's a problem. This is a big part of the problem. So I didn't fill in all the numbers in here. You can kind of linearly extrapolate what the middle would be. So if you look at last year, you know, these are our retirement costs. PERS and STIRS are the cost for the retirement program. So if you look over this 1, 2, 3, 4-year period, there's a 10% increase, you know, in PERS. There's over a 6% increase in STIRS. Those are huge. So, and these are things that we have no control over. So you can see how these are going to have our personnel costs go up significantly. And then here's just our fund balances. So this is all still in the context of the multi-year. And so, you know, what you really can pay attention to here is that bottom line, that unassigned line. This is how much money we will have at this pace at the end of 2021 is $550. Where right now our beginning balance for this year was $2.5 million. So that paints a picture for you right there. And so that's why I keep reiterating that this is something that we in the Finance Committee are going to have to really think about how we're going to address this. So. And that's all I had. So that, you know, the next step is really, that's our big thing, is to come up with a plan to keep us operating in a positive certification. And I also just want to throw a shout out to Meg Kaili-Coley. She is the Director of External Business Services over at the county office. And I could not have, she's been tremendously helpful in this process and everything I've had to learn to go through it. So she's not here, but maybe she's watching at home. Who knows? Because she doesn't have better things to do. And that's it. So does anyone have any questions? Thoughts?
Any questions?
Concerns?
You know, it's been a huge learning curve since July when you started.
It's been, yeah, I will not argue with that.
And
but it's been good.
you went down to a meeting with CBOs in Monterey, right?
Sacramento, yes. So I went to a CBO boot camp in Sacramento, which was really, really good. And downtown Sacramento is actually kind of cool. I never hung out there before. But yeah, that was really good. I got to meet, you know, real CBOs at, like, you know, districts with thousands of employees and tens of thousands of up to 100,000 kids. I couldn't imagine something like that. But yeah, that was a good experience. I definitely think it was worth the investment. So, and I made a lot of good contacts there.
So I'm sure that if you find that you need more help, that you'll ask for it.
Oh, I will. Yeah. I have some ideas already.
Okay. All right, this is an action item. We have to approve the first interim budget report. So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Remy?
Aye.
Everybody else?
Aye.
Okay.
Now I go on vacation, right?
Now you can go on vacation? Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you, Jason.
It's a little past 6 o'clock, but we'll start our parent community comment time. And items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this body may be addressed at this time. Is there anybody here who came to make a parent or community comment? Okay, we'll go on to the board organizational meeting. We had 3 board terms in process this election cycle, and all the incumbents went to Ukiah and submitted their desire to be elected again, and nobody ran against them, so they're all appointed by the fact that they were the only candidates. But we have to swear them in anyway. And Jason, will you take care of that?
Sure, so what we usually do is,
You stand up.
yeah,
And Jim and Winspirit and Jessica.
Well, so we can,
Group swearing?
why don't you do a group, can you all read it together? Is that allowed? Oh, there you go, yeah. Practice some choral reading like we do in the classroom.
Ready?
yeah.
I,
Aye.
Jim Gay,
Spirito.
do solemnly swear that I will support the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Nice job.
It was a rocky start, but I think we pulled it off.
So, Winspirit and Jessica are 4-year terms, but because Jim was appointed, he was only re-upped for 2 more years, because when the Elk trustee comes up in 2020, he will have to run again.
Oh, boy, okay.
All right, that being taken care of, we, this past year, adopted a new procedure for how we organize officers. And basically, that establishes that the clerk automatically becomes the board president unless he or she declines. So, Mark?
I am declining for a variety of reasons, so the position is open.
Are there volunteers?
I don't remember how the policy reads.
I'll read you the policy. Let's see. At this meeting, the board shall elect a president if necessary and elect a clerk from its members. So, because the sitting clerk has chosen not to serve as board president, then the board has to choose a new president.
But not a new clerk?
No, and then that's a separate election.
Okay.
Wasn't it gonna be by seniority? I know we spent quite a bit of time going over this. Did that not?
That was a part of it. I think for the clerk, we kind of just agreed that probably you would be the logical person to go because you're more senior than me, but I don't think we made that as part of the policy.
I think the intent certainly is to change things around. So if Jessica you would have first dibs, I would say, if you want to be board president,
Okay.
okay? So
Sure.
then,
Don't worry.
Be president? No, I think you should be.
Oh, okay.
I will nominate Jessica to be board president. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye?
First you have to accept the nomination, don't you?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right. So
You
now-
be comfortable doing that with your hospital stuff?
I know I'm not going to be chair of the hospital board,
Right.
so I'm comfortable.
okay.
It won't be a conflict that way.
Okay, I just didn't want you
Yeah,
to overtax.
No, that's,
So, I think the intent of the, on the clerk is to have someone who has not served in office. And that basically restricts it then to Winspirit and Jim.
And the duties of the clerk are?
we set up the agenda.
You and the
Me with
board
the-
president and the superintendent set up the agenda. And then if the board president is unable to attend a meeting, then you have to chair the meeting.
And then the year after that, you are first in line to be president,
Gotcha.
if you want.
I'm interested in really putting as much extra time as I have into the potential bond stuff. So I'd be happy to pass it off to you if you're willing to take it, because I just feel like it's more time,
Mhm.
and the amount of time extra that I can put in is limited. If you don't feel like you can take it on, then I'm happy to.
Well, the year after, or either
That's
one
the
of you
gavel
interested in
down.
being president, because it would feed into that.
It's a long way in the future, I can't say.
Well, I think that, you know that you're gonna be taking a lot of time with the building, and, I think the only fair thing is for me to go ahead and step up.
Unless, Michael, you want to be, do you want to do that again, or that can't happen based on the policy?
I think
If
based
neither
on
of
the
you are
policy, it has to be.
interested.
No,
either Jim-
I'm not saying I'm not interested, I think that,
Well, there's a funny thing in there somewhere, just a second.
Well, it just says, no member is obligated to serve as an officer of the board. If a member chooses not to fulfill the clerk or president position, the board will nominate and elect a trustee to fill the seat. So, yes, I mean, if neither Jim nor Winspirit want to put themselves up for being clerk, then we start over again. But
What does new to the board mean? That second to last sentence confused me, because new is not defined. I mean, does new mean you were just sworn in today? The second to the bottom one.
That's the way I'd read that, because we do this in December, and if there was a new board member elected,
Okay,
that's the way I would interpret that.
So if we can elect it, then
It-
it could be Michael.
We could
You're-
elect any of us.
Yeah, Michael, would you be up for working that?
well, I mean, I think that the reason why I shouldn't be clerk is that if the clerk's position is going to tend to go automatically into the board president position, it should be a new person.
no, I think I'll go ahead and put my name in. It's not logical for anyone other than Win and I to do it, and Win's already assuming significant other contribution at this time, so I'll do it.
All right, so I'll nominate Jim Gay to be clerk of the board.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye?
All right.
aye.
All right, so Jessica, the meeting is yours now. Do you want to move over here, or do you want to do it from there?
Sure, I'll stay right here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done with, we still have to do the committees, right? The
Yep.
Board,
What's next?
um,
Oh, we have to appoint the superintendent as secretary of the board.
okay,
By motion, or how do we do that?
I'll nominate Jason to be secretary of the board.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then regular meetings of the year.
No, we have to do committee assignments.
So up there it says elect president if necessary,
Oh, I
appoint
see.
secretary,
We should go to
authorize
the-
signatures.
I was going by the
We should
agenda.
go to the next
Okay,
agenda.
I was just going by that list.
Yeah,
That's-
they're all on the, they're just at a different point.
Okay. So, we're going to be appointing committees. So, I won't be on a committee at this point,
Except Mecca.
except Mecca. So, we have board facilities. So, let's hear, who would like to be on a board facility committee?
I'm interested in doing that. Well, I'm interested in facilities and finance, and if I can only do one of those, either one.
Okay,
Didn't
and
we roll it, last year we went around, picked one, picked one, picked one. It seemed like,
that sounds good.
I liked how that worked.
Okay,
Okay.
so, Michael, I'll start with you.
I guess my first choice would be finance committee.
Okay, and then Mark?
I'll go with facilities.
Okay,
Facilities as well.
okay, so we're done with facilities?
MCN.
Okay, and Michael?
MCN,
Okay, so we're done with facilities and MCN? Mark?
Is there still a finance one?
There is a finance
I'll
one.
do finance.
So where does that leave?
Okay, so we have the policies, board policies.
That's it? Guess I'll have to take it. Okay.
I'll gladly take the other facility.
Okay, so Michael and Mark finance, right? Let me get this right. You write it down, Susan? And then Michael and
Jim, MCN.
Jim and CN. Facilities is Mark and Wind Spirit. And then the policies, Jim and Wind Spirit.
So I'll just contact the individual committee members for the best dates that work. That changes.
Okay,
Dates and times.
thank you everyone for that.
So Mark, we
And
didn't.
should we do an overall, it's an action, so, so let's have a motion to have the committees function as just described.
I'll make that motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the board calendar. So did anyone have any interest in changing any part of the calendar? I personally do. So anyone else have anything on the calendar they'd like to change? Anyone want to
Can I
start?
look over your shoulder? I didn't see it.
Okay.
Oh, you got it up there too.
So anything jump out at anybody? I'll give you a minute to review it. I'm going to start with what I'd like to see change. It is these Tuesday retreats, board study sessions are challenging. I was wondering if people are willing to make the special meetings on Wednesdays.
Still in the morning?
Same block of time, but on a Wednesday morning instead of a Tuesday morning. Same dates.
So we're talking about January 9th instead of January 8th. and,
Right.
Would that apply to the February meeting? Because
I don't know if it's
that was in the afternoon, the superintendent evaluation.
Yeah, I don't know if it's too late, for people, they already have their schedule set, but I would prefer a Wednesday on
On
all
that
of the
too.
Tuesdays.
All the Tuesdays turn to Wednesdays, is your
Right.
proposal?
Just one minor thing. I've already booked a financial advisor to come on the 8th.
Okay,
Can
so we'll leave that one.
we keep
That's
that
what I'm
one?
saying, the January and February, I wasn't sure if it's too soon, you already have plans, but if
Okay.
everything beyond that. All right,
That's
so
all right.
it sounds like, starting with the February 5th, making that February 6th. And then from that point on, the Tuesday board sessions are Wednesdays.
So that's okay, in some cases, it'll be a Wednesday and a Thursday meeting.
That's fine.
Okay. And then the other request, I'm wondering about, in the year 2020, on April 23rd,
Wow.
if that fourth Thursday, it would be significantly earlier, but I prefer the second, it looks like the third Thursday's spring break. So we pushed it off to the 4th, but I was wondering if it could be the 2nd instead of the 4th.
I think the issue there is that then the 2nd is AE week, because that's traditionally the week before spring break.
But we don't have off, that spring break is a district, but AE week is
Right,
is
but
just
we're
nice.
planning, that's a meeting that we tend to have at the high school, so there wouldn't be anybody at the high school.
Is that a problem?
I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's,
Okay, so anyway, that's the only other problem with my schedule, is that, so.
can we bring that back and get some staff input?
But it's only a year and a half away.
I know. That's why we don't have to decide now. Right?
Yeah, no, we don't have to, I'm just saying that's a potential issue. Okay, so for now, we're gonna hold off on that one, but it seems like everyone is up for Wednesdays. Okay, so is the calendar, it's now an action item. Want to vote on the calendar?
It is an action item.
Yeah, it is.
I'll move that we approve with the agreed upon changes.
Okay, a second?
Second?
Do you approve?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now we're up to the developer fees.
No, let's see, wait a minute.
We have board calendar, and we have approval of the calendar 9.5,
This one, Jessica.
the 9.5. Okay, so approval of the board action calendar is
Right.
next on the agenda. So any comments on the action calendar? I think aren't most of those things required time-wise?
Mm-hmm.
So any motions to approve?
I'll move that we, adopt this action calendar.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then 9.6, Jason, do you have any thoughts on the developer fees?
No, this is simply the accounting for them,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So we're all set?
Yep.
Jason, is he still here?
Yeah,
The developer fees, do you have any,
welcome.
just anything you want to share about the developer fees?
No, I mean, what's in your packet is really, Jason said, it is just an accounting. There's nothing else.
Okay.
I
So
move
that's
to
an action.
adopt resolution 2018-20.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and we are up to 9.7, approval of board policy as first reading on bullying.
And we did not have a policy meeting.
So have there been any changes in the, okay, do you want to carry that over as a first reading?
It's up to the board.
Did you have some concerns last time? I'm trying to remember.
About groups, about not individuals, but actual against groups, ethnic, religious.
And that's not in there.
Oh, right,
Right,
that change is not reflected in there. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's the only change I had
That's
last
right.
time.
So we need to, the committee needs to meet and,
That, I think because the committee didn't meet, I also had questions about 9.8. If you want to just
Well, let's
recognize that as, okay, let's take the action first on
One at a
9.7.
time. So what you would like to have in it is,
Because it talks about aggression against individuals,
Right.
and I feel also against groups.
and is there language for that you have seen somewhere?
No, I haven't seen the language, but I'm concerned
Okay.
about, as far as in the various minority groups or religious groups, any kind of bullying against a group of people rather than individual.
Wouldn't it just be an aggregate amount of bullying, say? I'm just trying to, say
Doesn't
three
it have
people,
multiple-
say a group was bullying 3 people that were a group, then that's 3 cases of bullying.
Okay, let's just say, okay.
I'm just
let's say
not that I'm disagreeing with you, I'm
let's
just
say
trying to
somebody's
parse it in terms of
drawing
changing the,
swastikas all over the campus.
right?
So that's an aggression against a group? I mean, I
I
don't
don't know
know.
if that's bullying, I don't think it's a good thing, but is that bullying?
I don't know, some people say it's freedom of speech.
Well,
So,
right.
I don't know if you want to have a policy conversation about it or not at it, but I can see somebody bullying, let's say, someone from a certain country or somebody of a certain gender.
Well, since, I would say since the policy, since the committee has changed, let's hold it over as a first read so that we can
That sounds good,
look at it.
okay?
I move that we hold over 9.7, carry it over as a first read again.
I'll second.
Okay, what do you, in favor? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then, 9.8, it's information only. There are a couple of things I have questions. I'm fine with accepting this information only with the first read at the next meeting. Does anybody have any other opinions about that?
I think that, as I understand it, both the policy committee will meet and Jason will be meeting with our local groups and get feedback. And if we can agree on that language after next week, next meeting, then we can go forward. Otherwise, we can hold it back at that point.
That sounds good.
So the policy committee's discussed this somewhat already. Can we meet after you meet with groups to see what their input is?
Yeah, I think we should, what I'd like to do is plan on meeting the week before the January meeting, because then I'll have met with everyone. Well, that's what we used to do, is meet the week before the board meeting, so it'd be the week of the 10th, or whatever that date is, the week.
And the policy committee now is who?
These guys.
Jim and I.
And this was first reading?
It's,
It'll come back as a first read.
okay. Any more future items for the agenda? No? All right, then we will be back January 17th, right here, K-8 School.
Sure you sign those oaths and then yours.
Guess I don't sign it.